I met Robert Dell'Osso at NARPM broker owner doing the NARPM elevation designation interviews, and something really interesting came out of that. He told me that he has a zero churn policy, and that, they've effectively dropped their, I don't think their churn is exactly zero, but they've effectively just like all but eliminated it. And at that point I knew I needed to know more. So I invited him on the show. Robert's a super interesting guy, comes from a, I believe is HP or IBM, kind of like big business background. And he's approaching the way that they've approached these early implementations of business processes that have now become ubiquitous in the industry, like remote hiring and leadership and kind of how you roll out product adoption and stuff like that, along with these beliefs around radical transparency that he has for owners, which is the secret to his zero churn. So I think you're gonna be pleasantly surprised with how Robert is handling that stuff. And I'm gonna give you a little teaser. He gives his owners access to his dashboards and his software, but you're going to have to listen to hear how he's doing it. All right, enjoy. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. Robert.
Pablo.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too.
Robert, as you and I were talking at NARPM broker owner, what stood out for me that I really wanted to get into is you mentioned something around the idea that you either have zero churn or you strive for zero churn. And for me, as a person that loves to read about technology and all these different things, and I'm in the marketing world, in that tech world, they talk about how like LTV is the new lower cost of client acquisition, right? Like increasing the lifetime value of your clients, reducing churn is now kind of like the Shangri-La of having a great business. And it's just not something I hear property managers talking about very often. So I'd love for you to just kind of tell me where the aha moment of being that obsessed with churn came from.
Well, I fully recognize getting to a net zero churn is probably impossible, but I always want to strive for it, right? They say the industry average is like 10 or 20% a year. I'm like, we manage 500 doors currently, and I would just stay awake at night if I knew or just assumed I was going to lose 50 to 100 doors every year, right? And I'm sure my BDM would too, because she would have to be cranking out new ones 6 ways to Sunday. So it's a what can we do to minimize that, right? And sure, eventually owners are going to sell, right? Just whatever, they want to sell their house. But we don't lose much. We might lose in the single digits during a year, never more than like 3%. At most, if it's something really weird happening. And I just go back to what we talked about at broker owner, transparency, right? If owners feel like they can trust you, they really don't have a reason to leave unless that life-changing thing comes and they're like, hey, I want to sell this property, right? I need to divest for whatever personal reason they have. But as long as they trust you, there should be no reason to leave. Because if I'm working, I have rentals, and if I was using a property management company and I trusted them 100%, I certainly wouldn't switch because another firm's going to charge like a point less or something. It's kind of the same around. There's a lot of hot softwares in our industry right now and people wanting to switch, but I'm like, I'm not going to switch just for the sake of switching because of, the hot software everyone's using. It doesn't make sense to me, right? It doesn't make business sense. It doesn't make efficiency sense. If you get down in simplistic terms, if you can keep owners' houses rented so they're ideally not churning every year, turning over every year, collect rent on time, pay them on time, give them a statement every month, just transparent financials, they're going to be happy. A lot of our owners we never hear from. Absolutely never hear from. We might reach out to them and we never hear back because they're happy, right? If there's no problem, they're not going to reach out. Just keep doing what you're doing.
The old no news is good news. You said
Right.
something. You said something there that really kind of like sparked something for me, and it's the idea that I don't think I too am a rental property investor, right? I have a small portfolio of five homes. I don't leave if I trust you. I'm not leaving, and it's because the the difference in what I believe a property manager can do or not do for me versus the other property manager doing or not doing for me financially pales in comparison to the difference in experience I think a property manager may or may not do for me, right? So like while I feel the talk in the industry, right, there is this like movement in the industry of like having to move into like talking about NOI and proving your NOI and that's what's going to save you. I just don't know how much you're really going to be able to like gain that trust from someone else of that versus the idea that I can really reduce the amount of I call it the KTAs, reduce the amount of kitchen table arguments that you have with your spouse over
Mhm.
the year because you're not sitting there thinking, why aren't they doing this or why aren't they doing that? How does that sound to you? I mean, is that like directionally correct and kind of like why you guys are having this approach?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just don't see most of our, I like to think all of our owners are smart, right? And so why switch just for the sake of switching?
Yeah.
What materially are you going to get better versus, a smart person would just reach out to their PM if they needed something done differently or they're looking to improve on something and have a conversation,
Yeah.
right? Just, hey, I want to do this a little bit different with my property. Okay, let's talk about it. So, unless it was something crazy, maybe you can accommodate your process. It doesn't have to be some sort of unique kind of custom process, but if you can accommodate them on little, and a lot of times it's just little stuff, right?
Yeah, well, so let me challenge some of that stuff. First of all, at what point did you said you have around 500 doors. At what point did you have the luxury of thinking this way, right? Like I talked to a lot of property managers that are just like at the 150 door range around there, and they're just like, man, I'm just trying to get it in any which way I can, and I'm trying to figure these things out, right? But like you're playing offense, you're not just playing defense and in like a loop. At what point did you get to that?
It was probably in the lower door count, to be honest, probably in like the low 100s. And that worked for me because when I started this company in 2016, I felt I could do it better, right? Property managers kind of have a bad rap, right? I've seen, if you've ever been on Reddit, like they love to eviscerate property managers. We're the worst people in the world and we're all slumlords, right? So I went in, started the company with efficiency in mind, right? I've never had big fancy office space. I am cautious about hiring. I want high productivity and efficiency out of my staff versus just throwing bodies at stuff, right? So I have an office. I actually have a windowless office that I've paid about 300 bucks a month for the last 9 years. And it's really for purposes of a good physical location for Google, right? And to get mail at, right? I don't want coming to my house or people showing up at my house. And we're never in there. I go in there 3 days a week, maybe to grab mail. So I could afford while still maintaining profitability if I needed to get rid of an owner, even, right? Or something churned away or they sold a house. It didn't stress me out. I've talked to other PMs and I hear about like, oh, this owner is just terrible and it's just killing me, the 80/20 rule. I said, well, get rid of them. Well, I can't afford to get rid of them. If you can't afford to get rid of one owner, you need to look at your business as a whole because you're doing something wrong, right?
So I'm hearing you avoid high fixed costs and
Yeah.
that gives you a certain amount of flexibility. But isn't the avoiding of high fixed costs, doesn't that come with sacrificing quality of life? Like if you're or so I yeah, so I'll let you just answer that.
For me, no, because I love my job. I worked in the corporate IT world for 20 years and it sucked the soul out of me, right?
Yeah.
Some of the companies are great companies, right? But still, I never enjoyed my job for 20 years. So, but I learned a lot as a project manager, right? And you can apply it into this space.
Yeah.
So I don't mind popping open my laptop at night or on weekend if I'm sitting around and no one's around wanting to do anything and just doing a little work because I enjoy it, right? It's fulfilling to me because it's mine, right? I built it. So it doesn't affect me that way, right? And we've got good processes in place and we're refining processes. And the one thing I wish I did was deploy more regimented processes when I had 24 doors, right?
Mm.
It seems like overkill, but that's what's scalable, right? It would have been a lot easier. I don't think I have growing pains or had growing pains, but looking back, I could have done things more efficiently. They would have made things easier. So, I don't mind if even if we go on vacation or we go down to our place at the beach, I'll pop open the laptop in the morning before people wake up and check on things. And it's not because I'm stressed out about stuff. I just enjoy it, right? Some people go and I don't know, turn on and watch ESPN or Sports Center, right? It's just something I do.
Got it. Yeah. I guess loving your job is undefeated for giving you energy to work, right? So
Right.
So that helps. All right, so then let's get into this zero churn thing. You've essentially indicated to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but the formula that I've heard from you is this approach to 100% transparency, right? Like
Mhm.
building trust and then incorporating proactive touch points. Is there anything else as part of this like effort towards zero churn that we're missing before we like dive in and break those down?
No, I think those are the two biggest areas. The transparency is huge, especially when it comes to financial transparency.
All right, talk me through that. Talk me through how you deliver. Like, is 100% transparency? You said you're a process guy. You said you're an efficiency guy. Do you have a policy for transparency that leads to a process for transparency that leads to like a tech stack for transparency? Like, talk to me what your transparency kind of program is.
Well, it's really so we use Appfolio and it's in the owner portal, right? In the
Mhm.
owner dashboard a few years ago, and I pushed for it for a number of years. I actually was part of the beta rollout. It was great. Our owner dashboard has live month-to-date data, and you can give owners access to run reports, cash flow, income reports, general ledgers, whatever you want, right? So there's 5 or 6 reports in there that I let them run. And some people, that gives them heartburn, like other PMs, like, oh my God, why would you want an owner? What if they have all these questions? I'm like, so what? If they have a question, come to me. I'd rather be able to answer it for you, because what'll happen is if they are confused about something financially and you're not willing to answer it, they're going to start losing trust in you, right? Or they're going to assume you're hiding something. I'd rather you come to me with some complex financial thing. And I've gone to owners and said, hey, I don't know how to explain this correctly to you. I know what's happening, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to engage the support team from my management software, in this case, Appfolio, and have them explain it to me in layman's terms. I've actually gotten them on calls with owners and had them explain it for them because, hey, maybe I'm not the best at it. So, and then they're happy, right? Because they see you taking that extra step. If you start trying to deflect or avoid, they're going to assume something's wonky with their financials.
Man, that's so refreshing to hear. What I'm hearing from you, Robert, is that you've built a business that is built for like presence. Like it feels like you're guiding yourself by your ability to not move away from the client, which is what I hear so much in folks that are like systematizing and trying to
Mm-hmm.
like build these processes to get away from the client. And what I hear you building is proximity to the client. That idea of I don't, the transparency of like giving the owner access to your PMS system, dashboard and run their own searches. I think that that's definitely like a radical concept for most people. But what's really radical behind it is that idea that you don't want owners facing problems behind your back. You want them facing their
Right.
problems in front of you. And to me, that's where all of this is going, right? Like, is that a concept that you find yourself having to explain to other property managers like that they don't understand the value of it? Do they mostly get it? Like,
I have. I mean, some get it, but I have. And some just have this innate fear of giving too much access to owners. But at the end of the day, my response is it's their property, it's their money. Like,
yeah, true.
you're their fiduciary. You should be willing to share anything with them and have confidence in yourself that you're doing it right. Do
Yep.
mistakes happen? Absolutely. But it's, owning those mistakes and correcting them goes a long way, right? It's a
Can you
it's a long-term relationship. This is not like a short-term transaction like real estate brokerage and you move on. This is years long.
I love it, man. I don't know how much we've talked about my background, but essentially my whole thing for the last 10 years is chasing this thesis of like the value of community creation for business development. And one of the
Hmm.
things that you hear when you build a community for somebody and you give them access to clients and other people, right? Like people can talk amongst themselves. It is often the same conversation. Well, what if like someone's angry and now they're going to make everybody else angry and like, this kind of thing. And it's like that same concept of like, you want to know, man, like and one of my most successful clients, we have this WhatsApp group that's still alive and very, very, very well. And like they changed their property management agreement like 3 years ago. And one guy in the group, like brought it in. They're like, oh, hey, everybody needs to be careful because they're doing X, Y, Z and this and that. Obviously, that was the opportunity to just kind of like explain that that's not really what's happening, right? Like they were basically saying how like, oh, they're holding an extra $500 in escrow. If you multiply that, they're making this much money in interest. And it's like, no, 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 we're holding this because we don't want you dipping into savings when there's like a
Right.
maintenance expense or something like that, and it's a better experience. But the fact that that happened inside the community was was way better than it happening somewhere where we had no idea. Do you have like a moment where somebody brought you something where you're like, oh my God, thank God he brought this thing to me, and you were able to kind of like win that trust back in that way?
Yeah, I mean, there's times, usually it happens around tax time, right? They don't understand a 1099 calculation, even though we send out stuff. And I think next year we're going to make some videos to send out, and it's usually around prepaid rent, but they assume we calculated it wrong, even though it's all programmatically calculated, right? The
Hmm.
softwares. We're not manually writing numbers and stuff, or they're questioning expenses or something. And a lot of it is just explaining it to them. And then they're just, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks for letting me know. And they're happy, right? Because they'll go into it like thinking we screwed up and we've reported something incorrect to the IRS. And, knock on wood, we haven't had an incorrect 1099 calculation because, we're using software, right? So it's all programmatically done. And if their program was wrong, thousands of property managers would be letting them know, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
we know it's right.
So
And it's
do you find that
sometimes it's
are they coming to you like upset and agitated, and when when you're like, no, no, and then you explain to them like it just changes the conversation? Is that how it goes?
Yeah, I've had some, not all, but some, like they'll call me and they're like, "Hey, you screwed up my 1099. It's wrong. It doesn't match the income and expense report, and I've got to file my taxes." And I say, "Well, let me just pull it up real quick." And I'm like, "Okay." And I just walk them through it. Here's the 1099 calculation, right? It's say $10,000, rent income of 9. Look, you have prepaid rent of 1,000, so you get to 10,000, right? And then I explain prepaid rent to them, right? That's rent received in that tax year, even though you may not get it till the next year. It's when the income hits the property, right? And I'm like, it'll off, if they don't do prepaid the next year, it'll offset on the next year's taxes. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, here's a couple links to the IRS that are helpful. So even if you have a tax professional who may not know, just kind of a scary thought, send them these links, right? And that'll explain it to them. And then they understand, and it just changes the whole dynamic. So
How many of these conversations are you having? Is this you, or are you talking about your team has this
it's
conversation?
me. I mean, they may reach out to me or my business development manager, but it's not a lot. Every year I expect 5 to 10 owners to reach out about 1099s. And I think just, if you've got 300 plus owners, if you're only getting questions from 5 to 10, I think you're doing okay.
Yeah. Okay. So 100% transparency is access to this unfettered access to the software, an audience with you whenever they're upset, you or your BDM whenever they're upset.
Mhm.
Anything else goes into the 100% transparency piece?
Yeah, and by software access, I mean they're not logging into our internal Appfolio instance. They're getting it all through their owner dashboard, right? Through their portal.
Mhm.
Just to clear up for some people who don't know. And in there, they've got all their monthly statements. They've got all their 1099s since they've been with us. They can run reports, pick dates, ad hoc reports whenever they want. So that kind of stuff.
Got it. So you're curious, here you go,
Yeah. Oh, I
easy
want to
peasy.
go run a quick
Yeah.
where I am year to date. Sure, here you go.
Okay. So then we were just kind of talking about this 100% transparency. This leads to it leads to extra touch points, right? Like because now they have like they can run their query, they can come talk to you when they're having a negative experience, right?
Hmm.
That's like a good defensive touch point that you want to like not go for too long and come to you. But you also mentioned this idea around proactive touch points. When I think of a proactive touch point, I'm like, are you taking people to golf or kind of like what's the idea here?
No, I mean, a lot of it's just things we do in the course of our day-to-day management of the property. So take lease renewals, right? We do our periodic inspection and we send it to them. We don't just shoot them over the report. Here's your inspection. We shoot them over the report with recommendations of stuff that may need to be done. And maybe the house is great, nothing, it doesn't need anything, but it's, here's your annual inspection. Everything looks good except for the following we'd recommend doing. If you want us to proceed with these, please let us know. Or some of them, if we know they're cheap enough, we may just have done if it's within our approval limit, right?
Hmm.
Hey, your house has a lot of mildew growing. We're going to go ahead and have it power washed because we know we can do it for $200 and our approval limit's 500, right? We've already done this. And a lot of them appreciate that, right? Being proactive on things like that. But letting them know, because if you just shoot them over a report to look at it and they don't necessarily know how to interpret it right, right?
Hmm.
You know, so they may want to know, what am I looking at? Is the house good? Is this telling me it's good? Because some people don't know. They don't know as much as we do about houses, right? So I just like to be proactive in that sense with them
Yeah.
and just
You're,
share it with them.
you're describing me as a customer, right? Like I'm the type of guy that gets a report and I'm just like I have like a blank stare and I don't know. Or
Right.
like I just hired a functional medicine doctor and she did all these tests on me and then she got on a Zoom call and talked to me about these tests and then she sent me this list of like stuff I'm supposed to do and it was like Chinese to me. Like I was like
Right.
I need you to send me like a Loom video explaining to me what 5 grams of protein is for breakfast. I have no idea what this is, lady. Right? It sounds like you are from that story and from the 1099 story. It sounds like you're somebody that when you are responding to someone on anything or you're sending them something, you're not just sending them data, you're sending them data and resources and a certain level of care that I feel like is like a compounding interest move, but it also feels daunting for me to think, oh, I need to go like Google this thing and figure it out for them before I send it to them. Do you have like a system around these things where you're sending these messages and they have solutions to them, or is it just like extra work?
So my remote team members, they're the ones having a lot of the communications because I've kind of coached them up, right,
Hmm.
around things. And now they have a pretty good idea when they see in a periodic inspection report that's in their pod. We're doing the pod structure, right?
Hmm.
So they have the communications with the owner. And I know that's a little different than some people do. Like our remote team members are phenomenal and they're behind the computer all day, right? So they can get communications out quicker, right? Versus somebody who's in the field running around from house to house and then they come in to do it either late at night or the next day. So
Hmm.
through experience and checking in with me with these periodic inspection reports, they know what to go ahead and send to the owner. At first, they would run it by me. Hey, I'm looking at these. I look at the reports. So there's a little bit of a heavy lift to start with, but now they just do it because they've learned, right? They're smart people.
I'm reading behind the lines here, and you initially said something along the lines of like you're slow to hire. And now you're saying things that tell me that you hire really well and you keep people for a long time. Do you care to share your hiring process?
So it's been a little ad hoc, to be honest with you, but
Yeah.
we're putting more structure around things.
Okay.
My wife came on board as our COO
Yeah.
this year, and she's putting a lot more structure
Okay. So it's
around
not
things
so
for me.
so the magic is not
Uh,
the hiring process then. Like
Well,
what's
it is because originally I used a service to hire my first remote team member like 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago or something. And she was great. She got a job after like 9 months at the American Embassy in La Paz, Bolivia. So she had to take it because that's one of those like societal status things for her. But she said, hey, look, I give you 2 weeks, but I've got this friend. She's great. I worked with her. You know, her English is great. She's bilingual, college educated, no issues, super smart. I'd like you to interview her. So I talked to her and she's great. And I'm like, and honestly, at the time I was in a bind. So it was like, yeah, let's do it. And she's
Mhm.
been with me like 5, 6 years now. She's our process champion. She knows lead symbol inside and out. Like she thrives on that stuff. So she's become my staffing firm, basically. I go to her, I say, hey, Lehia, her name's Lehia. We got to hire another person. Who should we hire? Hey, yeah, I got this friend Karen. She's looking, right? She'd love to go to come work. We hire Karen. Karen's been with us for a year. She's great. Karen got promoted. She's running her own pod now too. I said, look, we got to backfill Karen. Yeah, I got this guy. His name's Antonio. He's phenomenal. Antonio is actually a lawyer in Bolivia.
Yeah.
Wanted to work for an American company, knows Lehia and Karen's like, y'all rave about your job. I want to go do that. So
Mm.
hire Antonia, right?
Yeah.
So and this isn't meant to be a knock on the services that are out there, the staffing services, you know, they're great, but I've been fortunate enough to where referrals have worked for me for hiring. You know how it is. Sometimes you go to find your next job, it's about who you know, right? Like I've gotten a lot of jobs in my life about who I know, like they put in a word for me, right? So I've been fortunate, but we've got more structure around it. I do like the staff we have. I do like the remote team member model. I started my career with IBM, so working with people around the world was nothing new to me, right?
Mhm.
I knew people, I had bosses that were not in the US and they were my direct manager. So it's
Yeah.
not a big deal, right? It doesn't matter where somebody sits. I don't care that they sit in Bolivia if they can put together and have a educated professional conversation with an owner, by all means, right? By all means.
Do you think you're doing anything different in the way that you treat your remote teammates? Has it all just been like good fortune of like, is it Aaliyah or Alina? Or
Lihia.
Lihia, I was way off. Is it good fortune there? Like I have to assume there is some level of like nurturing, or is it ease of this like remote team culture that you've been a part of?
When you're on board people, you got to give them some good training and make sure they're comfortable and they know how to do their job. There's just a
Mhm.
little bit of a trust factor built. But one thing I despise is being micromanaged. I was micromanaged and that has pushed me out of jobs. So I hire people that I trust that you're going to get your job done, right? So I pay them a salary. I'm not making them keep a camera on. I'm not keyboard stroke logging them. This is your job. And if you get it done, I'm fine. Get your deliverables done and your tasks in the time frame that meets our processes, and I'm fine. If you need to leave at 3 o'clock for an hour or 30 minutes and go pick your kid up from school, I could care less. As long as I know how to get a hold of you and you answer the phone if there's an emergency, which there usually is not a true emergency that can't wait an hour, it doesn't bother me at all, right? Lihia, she spent about a year ago, maybe, she spent like 6 or 8 weeks in Europe visiting friends and working and just worked US hours for us. It was completely seamless. So what I tell people, and I like to tell people that are thinking about hiring their first remote team member, because there's so much value in it, right? The cost is so much less. It's just, you get really dedicated and loyal employees. So treat them well and they, are loyal to you.
Yeah, yeah. Remote teammates have definitely changed my life, right? Like your Lihia is my Brian, who when
Yeah.
I well, so first my employee number one was JP, who was a referral from somebody that was working for me it was at a different company. Met him, and he's been with us for again. He's been with me, employee number one. But then the game really changed for me when I hired Brian. Unbeknownst to me, Brian was like he's like the Gary Vee of Filipino VAs. Like he's got like an audience of Filipino VAs that follow him. So now we
Nice.
have this luxury of like when we need somebody, it's always going to come from Brian's audience and they're going to think like him and whatever.
Right.
But like hiring the super connector inside of a community of folks that are driven to work inside the US is very is very much a strategic advantage.
Yeah, I mean, we're working to bring Leahy up to the US to attend the PM Systems Conference in January.
Heck
She's
yeah.
working through the visa process now because she's earned that, right?
Yeah, I've been telling Brian to get his green card going so he can come to the US
Yeah.
also. Awesome, man. So having a team that you empower, that you trust to bring value to people is part of your proactive touch point policy, right? Like you empower them to go like the extra
Hmm.
mile because you do the extra mile for like you're there to help them thrive. Other kinds of proactive touch points right now, definition is extra recommendations when you send them some data, extra links, extra resources when you're sending financial information. What are other versions
Hmm.
of proactive touch points you do?
I'm trying to think. I mean, the recommendations when we do turnovers, like I like to tell people things that make sense for a rental, because sometimes you'll get owners who will say, oh, well, let's do these upgrades. And I say, well, you're not living in this house, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to slumlord anything, but it doesn't always make sense to go replace countertops with quartz, right?
Yeah.
I'd be more of like, hey, you need to put that money towards long-term capital improvements, right? Siding, roof, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to get your better bang for your buck. Or if it's an older house, windows, right? Because that's an
Mhm.
efficiency thing. And tenants like that because they know if they got old single pane windows, their electric bill in the winter or the summer is going to be much higher. Things like that are good ROIs for rentals is what I like to recommend to people. And I think the owners appreciate that. I've had to talk a few down from some expensive stuff because it's just not necessary. Maybe if you got a $5,000 a month house, premium rental, which is premium in our area, sure, yeah, you want to do some high end upgrades. But if it's your average $1,800 a month rental, keep it nice. If you got good condition countertops, maybe even if they're granite or whatever, but you'll go a lot longer by getting rid of ugly appliances and that are super old and just throwing in some stainless steel looking ones. That goes a long way in a kitchen.
what I'm hearing from you right now, what I hear you doing is being that trusted advisor by helping them make decisions with a real estate investor lens as opposed to a I live here lens or a real estate
Right.
lens, right? Like I'm hearing you're only replacing surfaces if it's going to help you reduce, like maintenance and stuff like that. You're doing shell improvements because that helps kind of like weatherize the home. It's easier to like operate for the resident. It's longer term for you, right? Like that those are the type of decisions that drive ROI, and you're speaking in terms of their priorities as opposed to like letting them make emotional decisions. You gave me another kind of story earlier of another proactive touch point was this you've gotten good at this idea that you get such good inspections that like forwarding people the inspection report is some kind of strategic advantage. You were telling me a story around that.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people who don't want to necessarily just forward the report. They'd rather be able to edit it and cut some pictures out, right? Oh, this looks pretty bad. I'd rather, hide that from the owner. Well, my personal approach would be, hey, this tenant, even if we put them in there, if they're doing something wrong with the house, call it out to the owner. Hey, we've just so you know, you're going to see this, here's your report. We've got an issue with whatever it is, a hole in the wall in the living room. We've already reached out to the tenant and we're working, figuring out what happened there, and we're going to get it rectified. And then we'll send you some pictures afterwards versus send the report and the owner's like, hey, what about these holes in the wall? Or, why is the carpet torn? They would rather you go to them with the report and say, we know it's torn. We've already reached out. It's being addressed. And then we'll follow up with you once it's done.
Yeah.
On those cases, I always get back all right, thanks for letting me know. Keep me posted. Because that's what they hired us to do, right? They know, for the most part, people know not every rental is going to be smooth sailing. All right. I've had it in mine. I've had a house trashed. I mean, it is what it is. It's just part of the business we're in. Obviously, there's things we do to try to mitigate that stuff, but it's going to happen, right? We don't live in a perfect world.
Man, what I just keep hearing from you in all these what I've been calling proactive touch points, and even in your defensive touch points, right? Like what I hear is that you figured out a way to do just a little bit more, right? Like instead of sending a report, you send a report plus an explanation and recommendations. Instead of like showing damage, you're transparent, obviously, but you are sending people the damage because obviously you're picking their side, not the resident side. So why would you hide it? But you're also basically like making the call of, let's get an estimate of how much this is fixed, and we're working on it. And it's not just like, hey, bad news happened. You're the one that needs to tell me what I need to do next. You're just kind of like taking the lead on a lot of this stuff and just going just a little bit beyond the expectation, right? You're kind of like over delivering it on every touch point, which I find really attractive.
Well, that's doing right by your owner. That's doing your job. You're the fiduciary, you're their legal agent. So get ahead of things, because when you hide things or hope they don't see it, it's going to be more expensive for them down the road, right? If you can address something now and fix it, you know, that's a lot cheaper than putting it off for a year or two. That's almost like a deferred maintenance, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to ignore this problem. I'll deal with it the next turnover. Well, you could have fixed it for $300, but now it's $3,000, right? So you got to do right by your owners, right? That's your job, right? Like you're their fiduciary to help them maximize their return on investment. You hear it all the time. So that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, right. It's just best practices, right?
Yeah, you just got to do it.
All right. So here's what's pinging for me right now. I my view on kind of like what's changing out there, right? Like property management is changing. There has
Mhm.
been, like I think the affordability crisis and interest rates being up and all that stuff has really changed the perception of the industry from the outside in, right? Like everybody has an opinion about property management now when before nobody
Mhm.
even thought about them. Inside out, the customer is changing, right? Great generational wealth transfer. These like portfolios are being handed down from boomers to millennials. And my version of all of this stuff is like, well, AI is like the giant shift that's happening everywhere, and that's changing the tooling, so it's going to change the business model, and you need to build a business model that is exactly built for like what you are already built to do, right? To deliver proactive touch points, to be there to reduce future arguments, the KTA thing. And my version of it is like people need AI to do this, but it sounds like you've already built a business doing this. And, and so like like my question is kind of like what is your what are you using AI for? What do you think what do you think property management needs to like think about with AI? I know that you have takes on this.
Yeah, I mean, businesses have to innovate, right?
Yeah,
I like to refer people to the book The World is Flat, the Friedman book. If you haven't read it, it's a great one. I had to read it in grad school, like 15 years ago almost. And at a high level, it's you got to innovate or you get left behind, right? I don't personally foresee having like this sole AI, like your property is managed by AI completely, right? There's
no,
got to be that human interaction.
for sure.
But we recognize that it's a valuable tool, right? And you can use that tool to free up your humans to a degree, right? To get them to do other tasks that require a human or increase their skill set to innovate, right? So they don't get left behind.
Yeah.
So they're, in your case with Vendoroo, is there a lot of stuff that AI can probably solve without dispatching someone? Absolutely, right? And a lot like, does it make sense for me to get a maintenance request for someone that says, my outside power outlets aren't working, and then we just dispatch out a handyman or an electrician? Does it make sense to have a human call them and walk them through like trying to reset a GFCI and a breaker? I could probably get better use of that human's time doing other stuff, right? So you could get an AI agent or whatever you want to call it to walk them through those steps, right? I mean, because it's pretty basic. And honestly, the tenant would rather that, because if they can resolve the issue right there in 5 minutes, good, versus, oh, I've got to schedule somebody out. Maybe they don't work from home. I got to make sure I'm home. I got to take off from work, all that, blah, blah, blah. I got to wait a week or 3 or 4 days, whatever it is, right? Versus solving the problem within minutes. That's one of the big initial hits that I see on it. And we're looking at other AI. My wife is looking into it, and it's important. Like we keep hearing, I had a big takeaway from broker owner and having a side conversation with my wife and Wolfgang Kroski.
Yeah.
He's like, you got to have an AI policy first. So like that was first. Hey, we got to get an AI policy in place, because we can't just have everybody on the team hitting chat GPT and blasting stuff out everywhere, right? Because it can be wrong, right?
Yeah.
So get that policy in place and then start utilizing the tools. But it boils down to businesses have to innovate, right? People don't think of property management firms as tech companies, right?
Yeah.
But we utilize a lot of technology. So, and technology helps you manage the properties better, which leads to more return on investment for your owners because the costs for them are down. So keep innovating versus don't be the property manager who's doing everything on a spreadsheet.
If you understand that change is coming and AI is this giant industrial revolution, you're going to want to work with a company that is AI by DNA. And that, my friend, is Vendoroo. We are a native agentic AI solution built from the ground up with this assumption that the AI future is here. And what Vendoroo does, it is able to handle 80 to 85% of all maintenance work orders from beginning to end, while elevating that extra 15 to 20% so that you can actually take care of it. And most importantly, just getting you out of the grind and the forever firefight of maintenance so you can do other things. Like one of our clients hired Vendoroo.ai, and within 6 months, the amount of time that saved her from maintenance, she dedicated herself to business development. She started adding 10 doors a month over the last 6 months. It's been 60 new doors. It's been a huge change, huge growth for her business, way more profitable. So if you want to do that, you want to get yourself out of the mundane, get your team out of the mundane, let them focus on stuff that really, really matters. Go to Vendoroo.ai, book a demo with us, and we would love to help you build an agentic AI property management business. Vendoroo.ai, book a demo. Enjoy the rest of the show. I want you to walk me through. I've heard Wolf say this. I know that when I started commenting on, like, I'm now like interacting with you guys on LinkedIn all the time, right? Like I know I know Cheryl's out there running the company page, right? I could
Yeah.
tell. And she, so I've heard Wolf say this idea of like you got to have an AI policy. I really respect how Wolf is pushing the envelope out there on AI. Like I think his content is content that people need to pay attention to. And I want you to talk me through what does implementing an AI policy look like. But before we get there, as a former IT guy, right? Like I hear you saying all the things that I believe that this is AI right now should be used to do the stuff that isn't necessarily going to move the needle so that you can put your people into the places that move the needle, right? Like
Right.
it's not about doing more work, it's about the work that you do being more important. And I, as a marketer, out there basically saying that's the big difference between this AI generation and the SaaS generation. The SaaS generation really was like, let's do more work, let's add some efficiency.
Hmm.
But I don't think it was really about replacing you out of that to do something different. You coming from the IT world, does that hold water, man? Like, is there a mindset shift to like the AI thing, or am I just kind of like being markety out here?
Yeah, I consider myself an early adopter, right? That's always been my thing. So like if I see something new and cool, but I feel like in a sense I missed the boat on AI. I know it's super new, but like there was people getting into it, a year or more ago, and it's always evolving. So
Yeah.
now it's all in and not all in like crazy, but like let's go learn as much about it as we can. Let's see where we can use it. I think it'll directly contribute to helping us develop our team members as well, right? So if we can free up some of those trivial type tasks and utilize AI, that'll give them more time to learn new stuff, right? To innovate. So it goes back to you got to continuously innovate. When I worked for IBM years ago, there was a push to offshore stuff, right? Remember, it was offshoring and they didn't call them remote team members.
Mm-hmm.
And I started at IBM in 2000. I worked in a call center here in the Raleigh area.
Mm-hmm.
I had commercial insurance clients, agent, and a big national firm, and I would troubleshoot, anything IT for them on the phone.
Yeah.
All that went overseas, but I never went into it thinking my career is going to be sitting in this call center doing IT stuff, right? I'm going to end up like on Office Space, the movie.
In your tech.
I wanted to I moved up pretty quick. I moved up into, kind of team lead roles and management roles and project management roles because I felt like IT moves fast and it moves really fast now compared to 2000 or
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s, but I needed to continuously improve myself to stay ahead, right? And keep getting ahead. I didn't want to do the same role for 35 years and retire and then, I don't know, wither away, right? So I want that for my team members, right? Not even the remote ones and our local ones here. Like I want them all to develop themselves into, more highly skilled, productive members of society. And if that takes them away from us eventually into some different role or industry, even, hey, great, no problem. People come and go from companies all the time. I want what's best for my people.
Yeah.
So that's just my outlook. If you got to keep innovating, if you feel like you can do the same thing, if I was managing properties the way I did in 2016 when I started, I would not be very efficient right now. That's for sure. There's no way
Yeah,
we'd
man.
do it. We'd have to have 10 more people.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Man, you know what I really love about what you just said is this. To me, this will inevitably be a shift in leadership, right? Like it's not just about kind of like implementing AI and whatnot. It's really about how you change your mindset as a leader and the mindset of this is helping your team believe that this is what's best for them because it's not about losing your job. It's about being more valuable.
Right.
And
That's
this is
right.
going to help you whether you work for me or not. Like that's like that like kingmaker ethos that I think people really miss on, man. Like everybody wants to be king, but they don't realize that being kingmaker is like more powerful than that because everybody that then wants to be king will want to work with you, right? So I love that that's where it's going. And I think that that's a foundational kind of like cornerstone to success in this new reality where tasks are just commoditized. You've got to be like motivating people and like trying to say like how much better you're going to be and how, like what's in it for you, right?
Yeah. I mean, I did take, some of the tasks that like my local people did were shifted to our remote team members and they're like, oh, am I being demoted? Whatever. And no,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about being demoted. It's how do we run the business as efficiently as possible so everybody can be successful,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of people have the whole hire slow, fire fast. I'm like, well, no, if somebody's struggling with something, it's not just fire them, right? It's let's give them every tool we can to try to make them successful and hope it works out. Yes, some cases it won't work out, but in a lot of cases, if you do it right, you can, kind of change the culture. And we're going through a bit of a fundamental culture shift at our company by as we move to this pod structure and we, deployed all our processes in Lead Simple and we're running things through Lead Simple and we're not like pulling up this big, massive, nasty looking make ready spreadsheet because everybody knows what they're doing because they log into Lead Simple. And yeah, that's a cultural shift because it's different, right? They never did it before. They've been here for a couple of years and they're like, whoa, what's going on? And some of the people they've never worked for a corporate environment. Some of my staff, like big multinational corporate environment, like your IBMs and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whereas when I did, it was, hey, we're doing this different, and you had to get on board, right? Get on the train or you get left behind. So
So
it's
how are you
just
leading through that, man? How are you like, how are you, it sounds like you're taking so there is this idea of like making them believe, but like what goes into that?
Well, part of it's giving them the tools they need. We brought on, I paid people, process consultants to help with training and stuff like that. I've got multiple meetings during the week until they're comfortable, right? This isn't going to be a forever thing, but it's, hey, whatever it takes, let's set up meetings with whether it's individual or groups of people and take them through what they should be doing day to day. And we do that and just kind of check in with them a couple times a week. And eventually they get used to it, right? Because it's doing their job differently. So now if they get used to it, it'll become second nature to them and they just know to do it and it won't be an issue. But they've never gone through any sort of corporate transformation. So it's different for them. And that's a little scary, right? So, but the end result should be the company's more efficient. When companies are more efficient, they make more money. And when they make more money, it's more rewarding, even financially for the employees, right? Because you're meeting, exceeding KPIs, there's bonuses that can be paid out. Everyone can get better raises. I don't keep all the money for myself and spend it, right? You got to keep your people happy.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise they'll leave, right? And yes, absolutely part of that is money. People work to make money. I can't just throw them in and say, hey, figure it out or you're out, right? I use some of my great team members, like my remote team members who really embrace this and they're helping other team members out, right? Those people are stepping up. And I think in a lot of organizations, you'll see that, right? You'll have one or two people that step up and help a lot of other people in the organization so everybody's successful because they see the big picture.
I love it, man. What I'm hearing is some stuff I really believe in, right? You first went to, as I'm leading through this change, I am making sure that they have all the resources possible for this change. Significant financial investment to make sure that you are setting them up to win. A, B, aligning incentives with them through the understanding that if these processes work better, the company's going to be more profitable and you're going to get a slice of that profit as well. Keeps people engaged, keeps people on mission, keeps people motivated to a certain extent. And then, I mean, those are the two main things. I was gonna call
Yeah,
back to something I had earlier, but yeah.
and it helps us scale, right? I'm
Yeah.
I'm not happy with 500 doors. Like I don't have a number, but all companies want to grow, right?
Yeah.
If companies get stagnant on their revenue, they're failing is, what the world views. So I always want to grow and I want to keep adding doors. I put a stretch goal this year of 25% growth in 2025, right? Can we make it? I think we could. It's possible. We're looking at some other avenues. I'm looking at just not just our organic leads, you get paid leads. We're trying to set up a plan to maybe solicit other PMs who maybe want to exit and do some acquisitions, that kind of stuff. But you got to be scalable, right? So you got to have all that in place. And I made it clear to the team that, hey, yes, we're investing significantly in these processes, but I'm also willing to make whatever investments is necessary to make sure you feel comfortable that you can successfully do your jobs.
I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, strengthening the building as you continue to build, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, I like that. I like that. I could go down a whole rabbit hole of the idea of growth through acquisition versus growth through organic growth and whatnot, and have that whole conversation. But I'm going to stay away from it because it's going to lead to another hour. How do you develop an AI policy thing, right? Like, I hear Wolf talking about it. What's the experience like developing your AI policies, and how did you do it?
So you could start from scratch and just start Chat GPT in it. Cheryl and I are fortunate enough that we're members of Crane Group. So they have some intellectual capital out there that their members can use as a starting point, right? I don't think it's just a cut and paste. This is a good written out policy, and then you customize it for you. So that has made it a lot easier. Not easy, but easier for us, right? So
Yeah.
that's
So
where
what are
we
the components
started.
of it? Yeah. So what are the components of it? So like sign up for Crane. Crane has an awesome, like starting point. But talk me through like the components of like an AI policy. What's in that thing?
Well, it really needs to be around usage. And I'd love to we'll do another hour. We need to get Cheryl on
Okay.
because she's leading that effort, but it's really around usage. Like what's appropriate usage?
Yeah.
Who should be using it? Who should your audience be?
Mm.
The right time. Don't just use AI to respond to every email and blast them out or send stuff out to owners and tenants. Like I think you'd have to have a measured approach because it is a constantly changing technology, and it's not a one stop shop, right? One
Yeah.
size fits all. So
Right.
you just have to, as it gets better, maybe it'll get to something close to that, but I can't and I've got, I've had remote team members and local team members, they've used Chat GPT to like compose a professional, empathetic response to this tenant who asked for whatever, they wanted to get chickens and the HOA doesn't allow chickens, right? Or something versus just saying, nope, not allowed. Yeah, it's fine, right? I get it. People do it. But when you start getting in things around like discussions with owners or more complex issues, you just have to be careful because you want to make sure that what you're sending out is in line with your overall company policies, right? And you don't want to be saying something that could potentially violate fair housing, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Is there a nuance between everything that I'm hearing you say is basically how you use generative AI? Because it's like how you're using it as a tool to whatever. Is there a nuance in there between generative and agentic AI?
honestly, I'm not expert enough to
You're not deep in enough. Yeah.
deep in enough to be able to clearly
Well,
answer that.
well,
Like
well, thought
I'm
experiment.
phone a friend and call Wolf up real quick, but then
Yeah.
we'll be
Yeah.
here another hour and a half.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Fair. I think what I need to do is just do a podcast with Wolf and go through this. I think
Yeah, but you
that's
should
interesting
definitely
enough.
get Wolf and like Cheryl on there so you get a
Oh,
little bit
yeah. That'd
of,
be cool. Yeah. Yeah, or
yeah,
Cheryl. Yeah, yeah, perfect.
yeah.
Awesome, awesome, man. Okay, this has been awesome, man. I really have enjoyed picking your brain. Is there anything else? Is there anything else that you think is like relevant to this conversation that we should hit on?
Just go back to any PM out there. Just be as transparent as you can with your owners, right?
Yeah,
It goes so far, right? And it costs you nothing. It really costs you nothing to be transparent. And there's so much return on that investment of nothing. Like that will keep your owners happy. Like the owners I never hear from are the best owners because that tells me they trust us, right? So keep doing what we're doing, which is doing right by your owners, and your business will be successful.
I love it, man. I think that's never been more important than today when there's clearly like a trust crisis going on in the world, right? Like,
Hmm.
but we are in a post-truth world and AI is only going to add a whole bunch more noise and a whole bunch more
Right.
stuff to distinguish from. So I think the idea that you've built MasterKey Property Management to maximize trust, like as a trust maximization kind of like machine, I think is a really frame-breaking concept that we've been kind of like talking about for the last couple of weeks on our newsletter. But this is a really awesome illustration of somebody doing it well, man. So I'm just really grateful that we got to pick your brain about it and you came on and I'm getting to know you and Cheryl a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I'm super grateful that you asked me to come on. Like this is great. Like I love a good podcast, right? And so I wanted to be on more, and
Yeah.
I love talking PM, right? I can talk about it all day long to anybody. So
All right.
the more I get to do it, the happier I am. So thank you so much.
Yeah, there you go. Anybody out there looking for a PM podcast guest? Robert Dell'Osso says he can talk it all the time.
All the time.
Awesome, man. That's good. That's the show right there, man.